Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talking Flutes Extra with me, Jean-Paul Wright. And again this week, in part 3 of this series, is forensic psychologist Dr. Beth Wright. Hello, Beth.
Hi again.
Hello, hi. What's the best way to? Is hello a bit too officious?
It's too formal.
Hey, hi. Hi, Beth. Right, one of the questions that have been sent in this week is, I think this is really interesting, and I think it really affects musicians of all standards. And that's even those that are used to playing to thousands and thousands of people. And I'm not talking about performance anxiety. I'm talking about the difference between stress and anxiety and being aware of the trigger points to enable us to either cope with it rather than turning it into this recursive pressure cooker. Really, what is stress, what is anxiety, and what do we need to be aware of when those sort of funny feelings arise?
Yeah, so stress and anxiety, some people often kind of use the terms interchangeably, and they're similar in a sense, but they're also distinct experiences. When we talk about feeling stressed, it's more of an acute reaction in response to a certain situation. I think I spoke about this in a previous podcast, but it's very much linked to our fight or flight response. So those kind of core caveman physiological responses that we have that tells us we are in danger, that something bad's going to happen, that I'm not safe. And our body goes into sort of a stress response. So it releases cortisol, that raises our heart rates, we get sweaty. And as I said, it's in response to usually a triggering situation or a specific situation that happens. And it's an acute response. So it's a short-term response. When we are thinking about anxiety, it's often more of a longer-term difficulty. It's a clinical issue. Anxiety disorder is a diagnosable disorder. We can also experience anxiety outside of something diagnosable, but it's often more long-term and more about our way of thinking. So what often comes with anxiety is overthinking or excessive worrying, catastrophizing, thinking that the worst case scenario is going to happen, and it's more of a prolonged experience. So if we think about stress being acute and specific to a situation, anxiety is more of a constant state of being.
So can we address first the stressors? Mm-hmm. I suppose stressors, listening to what you just said then, stressors are probably self-induced, aren't they? Because when it comes to music and our performance, it will be a pending deadline, a pending performance, would it? It will be a pending lesson. It would be, would we be causing the stress ourselves, or could it naturally? I understand the anxiety bit, and we'll cover that in a second, but stress.
So stress is something, the stress response is something that we don't necessarily have full control over because it is a fight or flight response.
Oh, okay.
So it's often induced by a specific situation rather than self-induced. Whereas I guess where you're speaking to is anxiety, which is we can get ourselves tangled up in our own worries that actually never have happened, never will happen. But there's a 0.0001% chance that something might happen.
So it could be going to your teacher each week and your teacher being grumpy, always being a perfectionist or always demanding a lot of you. You're going to the stress will build up the closer you need to go to your lesson. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I understand that bit then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and different people are going to feel stressed or be triggered to feel stressed by specific situations. That example that you gave might not faze some people. They might go, well, I'll go and I'll do what I can and I don't really care what Sharon thinks about my performance, and other people might ride on Sharon's opinion.
I don't know any flute teachers called Sharon, but go on.
Oh, okay. We're running with it now.
Yeah, okay.
They might, hold Sharon in really high regard and put her on a pedestal and go, I really want Sharon to think that I'm the best flute player that she's got and be her best student. And again, we're eking into sort of worrying and rumination here. But
so does rumination happen as soon as the stress response begins? Do you then sort of start ruminating because you're feeling a little bit anxious?
So this is where I said they can sometimes come hand in hand. So we might experience the stress response because there is a stressful situation. We can't kid ourselves. You know, let's say going up onto the stage and performing can be stressful for people. We can't change that and just say, well, don't be stressed about it.
No.
But you're right, that can evolve and sort of metamorphosize into rumination and excessive worry about. That could be anything, whatever meaning we make from that stressful situation. I'm going to mess up. I'm not going to be good enough. What if I play this wrong? There's someone in the audience that I really want to impress. There's this, there's that, you know, and it can sort of evolve into anxiety.
Is anxiety an evolution or the recursive loop of a number of stressors? Or can it be something very different?
Yeah, I think anxiety is a sort of certainly a combination or a complex sort of combination of lots of different things, really. That anxiety doesn't tend just to be surface level. There tends to be something deep rooted that causes us to cling on to or hold on to certain unhelpful patterns of thinking or unhelpful beliefs that we have about ourselves, the world, or other people. Yeah, there is often a combination of things that can cause us to feel anxiety long term. And as well, remember as well, physiologically, anxiety can present very similarly to stress. We can feel that sort of heart racing, that butterflies in our tummy. We're not hungry, we feel sick. Our digestive system is all, you know, fumbly and muddled up, and we feel sweaty, and it can present in very similar ways to stress. I'd say anxiety, it's evolved sort of modern day. If you think about the things that we are anxious about, often they never come to fruition. But equally, we might be anxious about things that are about our kind of fundamental needs. Thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Am I going to lose my house? Am I going to be able to pay the bills? You know, I don't know if that's answered your question, but anxiety can evolve for a number of different reasons, and it can evolve in many different ways and present in a few different forms.
If someone has anxiety, they will be aware they have anxiety.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. If you think about somebody that is in a constant sort of fight or flight response, they're probably not able to access the part of their brain, or they may not be able to access the part of their brain that allows them to really sit with and think about what is going on for them in that moment. How are they actually feeling? What's happening here? They might just know that they're not feeling good and, you know, be kind of responding or trying to kind of just get through each day as best they can. And some people might struggle with the language. They might not know actually what is anxiety? What is that what I'm experiencing? We kind of assume this knowledge, don't we, that this must be, people must know what that is or what that feels like, or it's really super easy to spot, but it's not always super easy to spot, particularly because often a lot of people with anxiety are high functioning as well. So they can go on their daily life, they're presenting very...
That's interesting.
You know, yeah, absolutely. So we might have this idea in our head that somebody that is anxious, they're not going to go out, or they're never going to perform, or they're never going to, you know, do this, that and the other. And yeah, you can have somebody that experiences anxiety but is high functioning.
Does exploration with a professional in the field of cognitive behavioural therapy, is that useful for anyone listening that is aware that they have anxiety issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think even if you can't label what you're experiencing as anxiety, if you're not feeling good, go and see someone. That's what I would say. It doesn't matter if you don't have a label for it, or if you don't know what it is that you're experiencing. Seeing a professional can be really helpful. And for anxiety specifically, cognitive behavioural therapy can be really helpful, because what we know is that anxiety is fueled by unhelpful, maladaptive patterns of thinking, kind of core beliefs that are quite negative or unhelpful. And so being able to identify, okay, what is the cognition, what is the thought that is keeping those uncomfortable feelings there, keeping that sort of, that anxiety going, and how is that impacting on my behaviour and what I choose to do or not do, or what I choose to avoid or don't avoid, what I choose to control or don't control. So cognitive behavioural therapy can be really eye-opening in identifying those patterns that often we don't know are existing. Yeah, and just being able to speak to someone and someone to say, oh gosh, that sounds really tricky, actually, what you're experiencing. And just have somebody to talk it through with, dissect, untangle, really life-changing.
Now, I know you're passionate advocates of everybody speaking to somebody. And I know that you think, well, you believe that in America, where the idea of going to therapy it's not uncommon. It doesn't mean you've got a problem. You could just be going to have just a detox, because we all need to detox, don't we? But I know we're in the UK, and going to therapy would normally mean that you have a problem. Why should we, and especially performing musicians, where we have stressors hitting us all the time, why should we either go to therapy or have a close unit of friends that we can just talk to if we feel that we have an issue?
I think that people think that therapy is about digging into the deepest, darkest part of your soul, and you're going to be laid bare and exposed and going to have to talk about really scary stuff in your life. And
that's why I won't do it.
Yeah, I know. There's this assumption that it's going to be something that you don't want to embark on. And the truth is that therapy is what you make of it. It can be whatever you want it to be. And you're right, America has a really open, proactive approach to therapy. But I think it's just some shame around it in the UK. Like you said, there's just this taboo, this assumption that you've got really deep-rooted issues if you've got to go to therapy. And the fact of the matter is that you can explore anything and everything in therapy, and you don't have to go, below that iceberg if that doesn't feel comfortable. But equally, you might find a channel that's worth exploring that might explain a lot of what you're feeling, or it might resolve a lot of things for you to allow you to develop as a musician. So, as we said, I'm a massive advocate for therapy, whether it's sort of low-level difficulties, whether it's just actually I feel fine, but I just want to learn more about myself and what cogs I've got going on up there and how they're turning and why they're turning.
In your